Hey everyone, it is Gabe Collins. Welcome back to the channel. If we haven't met yet, I am a young sales professional that just entered the corporate workforce doing tech sales. My job here is to go through my journey and give tips and tricks and describe to you what it's like to be a young sales individual entering the corporate world. Today's topic is about bad and good culture when it comes to corporate culture. This is definitely something that I have to toe the line with. Luckily, with my job now, I absolutely love the culture, but I've had past experiences where the culture was not good. The purpose of this video is to be able to identify red flags before you even enter a job, and then also once you're in the job to identify red flags. So I want to preface this by saying I definitely don't want to deter anyone from any job. I'm not going to list any names here. I'm just going to simply say what is bad and what is good culture. So to begin, I really quickly want to identify what culture is in a corporate setting. According to a Gallup poll that I took here, and I'll list it above me, culture can improve the following key performance goals of an organization, including strengths, safety, compliance, DEI, innovation, and then high performance, specifically high performance teams. These are the criteria that I'm going to be looking out for as I identify what is bad and what is good culture. So let's get into it. I took some notes here about what I looked out for and what I've noticed since working in a place where I didn't love the culture. And these are some of the red flags that I found that I wrote down. To begin, I want to start with what you should look out for externally before you were to enter a toxic job environment. The first is if you're in the interview process or they're posting anything externally that says, "We're like a family," red flag. A lot of the companies that do that try to generate this large culture around "we're like a family" to gain this sense of loyalty, and people don't really understand why they're loyal to it after a certain amount of time. A lot of the times those companies are the ones that do massive layoffs, or they just don't treat you well, but you feel roped into staying there. Something that's really been coming out that I've seen a lot about is do not treat your corporation like a family. It's your job. Your family is your family. So don't be religiously tied to that organization. You can always make a move and you should be doing what's best for you. And I 100% agree with that. Although I currently love my job and I love the culture, if push comes to shove, I'm putting myself and my family first. And so I have to choose me if it got to that point. But yes, we're like a family. Absolutely not. I'm avoiding that 10 out of 10 times. The second is a lack of transparency. If you're seeing that the leadership team is avoiding answering questions directly about turnovers, promotions, or internal mobility, this is a huge red flag. And especially be looking out for this during the interview process. A lot of these companies will love to throw out the term, "We have so much internal mobility. We're such a high caliber team of really high pushing people." You just never know. You really have to see the results on paper and you really need to experience the culture for yourself. But if the recruiters and the people you're interviewing with and the leadership team aren't answering things directly and they're pushing out these very bubbly descriptions of what the culture is like, I take that as a red flag. The last thing that I wrote, and this is probably for any position, is just high turnover. If you're seeing a massive amount of turnover, definitely watch out for that company. You can always check repview.com, which is a platform where salespeople come together to rate companies and then also talk about what a reasonable amount or the medium average OTE and base salary is for each of these companies. And then they're stack ranked. People tend to be very honest in those descriptions. So definitely check out RepView before you were to accept a job offer to see what others are saying. You can also check Reddit. You can also check Glassdoor. You just never know how credible those people are, or even if they worked there. Always take things with a grain of salt. I would say RepView is probably the number one source. So now let's talk internally. What I wrote down to look for is first, people speaking poorly about each other shortly after joining. So if in sales, especially, if you're constantly being pinned up against the people that you join with, or even just people who have been in role for a while, it can be really toxic. It really pins you against each other. It's an unhealthy sense of competition. There should always be a sense of collaboration and competition where you're all lifting each other up, but you obviously want to do the best. If people are discussing poorly about each other, that's a high indicator that that's possibly the case in your sales organization, especially if people are talking really poorly about upper leadership, which is my second point. A lot of employees speak poorly about upper management, And rightfully so. I think in corporations, it just makes sense that a lot of salespeople don't feel like the upper management understands what they're doing and what may be best. From my standpoint, I take in every piece of information I can because I'm just a naive 21-year-old, but I would understand how someone who's maybe 10 years in role who has gotten a system down could be really frustrated with what upper management does if they're not on the ground floor selling. But if people are speaking really poorly about upper management, it's definitely something to take into consideration when figuring out how loyal you're going to be to that company and how long you want to stay there. Always take other people's opinions with a grain of salt until you experience them yourself. But if you're consistently surrounded by a bunch of negativity, it's probably a good indicator that the workplace is not a happy and fun place for people to be. It's more of something that's extremely dreaded by those who work there. The third point that I wrote down is companies that constantly or consistently contradict their own policies. I've heard a few stories of a few different reps at different companies who've explained upper management's either telling them they're making too much money and they're chopping their commission plans, or maybe, hey, if you sell XYZ product this week, you're going to get extra commission. And then the next week they say, oh, no commission for that exact product. That is extremely contradictory, and it loses the motivation and the ambition that you're trying to instill in your salespeople when you switch up on them every other week. So if you're at a company that's consistently contradicting their own policy changes, definitely see that as a red flag and definitely consider your position at that company. Finally, no growth opportunities. If the company doesn't have a lot of upward mobility, and even though I spoke poorly about that terminology, really, if people aren't getting promoted, if there's not any development roles, if they're not consistently trying to develop you in sales, you're stagnant, you're getting left behind compared to other companies. And I would suggest making a move. For example, the company I'm at now literally invests so much time and money in ensuring that we are the best salespeople we can possibly be. And this is something that's pretty common in tech. Personally, though, the company I'm at is an unbelievable training. So definitely look for companies that are developing their salespeople, that have high ratings from people who work there about the amount of development they receive, especially in associate roles and lower tier entry level positions. So now that I've covered what I believe are the main red flags that I've seen as a 21-year-old, I want to quickly go over why culture really matters. So I have this graphic here that I also pulled from the same Gallup study. Those who strongly agreed with I feel connected to my organization's culture were 4.3 times as likely to be engaged in their work, 5.3 times as likely to be strongly agreed they would recommend their organization as a great place to work, 62% less likely to be burned out at work, and then 47% less likely to be watching for other job opportunities or actively looking for another job. Now, why does this matter past the statistics? Obviously, as salespeople, some statistics don't matter to us as much. They're more for upper management. But why does this really matter as someone who's in the sales role? Well, I'll tell you. The burnout number is so unbelievably accurate. When you have a company that you're excited to go to work to every day and they enable you to do your job well, you want to go there. You want to accomplish your financial goals. You want to grow in your career. And so you won't burn out nearly as easily. To tie all this up, I have plenty of stories I could talk about, but I really don't want to speak poorly on anyone because I think that every company, every person has the opportunity to change. Companies consistently change all the time. So it's hard to dog on one when next month they could hire a bunch of young people and give them all opportunities. So I'm not going to speak poorly about anyone. That's not my job here. But my job with this video was to try to be able to show you some red flags and what to look out for. Let me know in the comments if you know anyone who's had a poor experience and what that was like for them. How did that reflect on their work and then their future at that company? I'd love to hear a little more about something I may have missed or something I could have added. I'd love to hear it. And feel free to like and subscribe. I'm posting more sales content. I did start my job about 2 weeks ago. I will be posting the intro video to that here pretty soon after I finish my training this upcoming week. Looking forward to making more videos for you guys, and I appreciate all of those who are following and listening along. So welcome to the ride, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a good day.